Marin had walked into the throne hall, expecting to leave it as a corpse. She had not expected to leave it wearing a crown. The floor of Duskmere's great hall was black stone veined with silver, polished so smooth she could see her own frightened face staring back up at her, and she pressed her forehead to it because that was what the condemned did when they came to beg. Her knees ached against the cold. Somewhere above her, on a dais she did not dare look at, sat the man they called the Ash King, Emmerich Vane, Alpha of Alphas, the wolf who had broken the Northern Rebellion in a single winter and salted the ground where it fell. She had come to trade her life for her sister's. "Speak," said a voice, and it was not loud, but it filled the hall, the way cold fills a room when a door is opened onto snow. Marin lifted her head just enough. "My sister is Ren. She's 16. She crossed into the Silvermark 3 nights ago." Her voice shook, and she hated it. "The law says the penalty is the wall. I've come to ask that you take me in her place. I'm older, I'm stronger. I'll serve, however you want, for however long. The mines, the kennels, the front line, I don't care. Just let her live." The court murmured. She heard the rustle of silk, the small, poisonous laughter of people who had never once been hungry. "Your sister poached royal ground," the king said. "You would die for that. She wasn't poaching." Marin's throat closed, and she forced the words out anyway. "She was looking for me. I keep the boundary lanterns on the West March. I'd gone quiet for 2 nights. A bad fever, and she panicked and went to find me and got turned around in the dark. That's all. She's just a frightened girl who loves her sister too much to be sensible." A wet, humiliating laugh escaped her. "It's a family failing." There was a silence then that felt different from the others, heavier, aware. And that was when she felt it, the thing she would spend the rest of her life trying to explain, and never quite could. A pressure had been building in the room since she entered, a low animal wrongness pushing against the back of her teeth, the way the air presses before a storm breaks. Every wolf in that hall had been holding themselves very still against it. She realized it came from the throne. It came from him. And as she knelt there, close to the foot of the dais, close enough to be struck down, the pressure simply stopped, like a held breath let go, like a scream cut off mid-note. The king made a sound she had never heard a man make. Not a word. A sharp inhale, almost a flinch, as though something that had been tearing at him for a very long time had abruptly let go of the wound. She looked up before she could stop herself. King Emmerich Vane was staring at her. He was younger than the stories made him, and worse for it. The stories let you imagine a monster, and a monster would have been easier than this. He had a hard, beautiful, exhausted face. Dark hair shot through at the temple with premature gray, and eyes the color of a blade held to firelight. Those eyes were fixed on her with an expression she could not read at all, something that in a lesser man she might have called fear. "Say that again," he said quietly. She loves her sister too much to be sensible." "No," he rose. The whole court flinched as one animal. "The part where you offered your life for hers," Marin swallowed. "I meant it. I still mean it. Take me. Let her go." Emmerich Vane came down the dais steps slowly, and every guard in the hall shifted their grip on their spears. And the beta, at his shoulder, a lean, sharp-eyed man in gray, said, low and urgent, "Sire," in the tone of a man watching a friend step onto thin ice. The king ignored him. He stopped an arm's length from where Marin knelt, and he looked down at her the way a starving man looks at bread he doesn't believe is real. "What's your name?" "Marin." He said it like he was testing whether it would hold his weight. Then, to the whole hall, without looking away from her, "Release the girl, Ren, of the West March is pardoned. Full pardon, entered tonight, before witnesses." The murmur became an uproar. Somebody, a woman in a high seat, jeweled, furious, came half out of her chair. The beta closed his eyes briefly, like a man doing arithmetic he already hated. "Your Majesty," a counselor began. And, the king went on, still quiet, still looking only at Marin, I will take Aluna, her. He held out his hand. You knelt to give me your life. I'm offering you a crown instead. Take my hand, Marin of the West March, and your sister is free and safe and rich for the rest of her days, and you rule at my side. Refuse and she is still pardoned. I don't bargain with the child's neck, but you walk out of here with nothing but her freedom, and I will spend the rest of my short life wishing you'd said yes. The hall had gone utterly silent. Marin stared at the offered hand. It was scarred and steady, and it was shaking, very faintly, in a way she didn't think anyone else could see. I'm a lantern keeper, she heard herself say, because apparently she was going to be stupid until the very end. I don't. I own 2 dresses. One of them has a hole in it. I've never even seen a fork with more than 3 prongs. Something moved across the king's ruined face, the ghost of something that might once, long ago, have been humor. Then you'll be a novelty. People are going to think I bewitched you. People think a great many things. His voice dropped, meant for her alone. Some of them will even be true. Decide, Marin. I've very little time, and less than you know. She thought of Ren's face. She thought of a whole life spent making herself small, so that others could have room. She thought, what is one more sacrifice? At the end of a life made of them. She put her hand in his. The cord erupted. And in the roar of it, as the king's cold fingers closed warm around hers, and that terrible pressure stayed gone, the gray-eyed Beta bent down and murmured 6 words into her ear that turned the whole triumph to ice in her chest. The last one is still screaming. They took her sister to her before they took her anywhere else, which was the only reason Marin didn't run. Ren came flying down the corridor in a borrowed cloak 3 sizes too big, and hit her hard enough to knock the breath out of both of them. And for a moment, nothing else in the world existed but the small, fierce shape of her sister, sobbing into her collarbone. I thought they were going to... I thought you... Marin, what did you do? Shh. It's done. You're pardoned. You're safe. Marin held her sister's face in both hands and made herself smile. You are never, ever going into that forest again. Do you understand me? Next time I go quiet, you bake bread and wait like a normal person. They're saying you're going to be Luna. Ren's eyes were huge. They're saying you're going to marry the Ash King. Marin, they say he... She stopped. Her gaze went past Marin's shoulder and she went white. They say a great deal, said the Beta, who had come up behind them on feet that made no sound. Up close he was, perhaps 40, weathered, with the particular tiredness of a man who spends his days keeping someone else alive. Ren, there's a coach waiting to take you to a house on the coast. Warm, safe, guarded. You'll want for nothing. His voice gentled a fraction. You may see your sister when it can be arranged. It will not be often. I'm sorry for that. Ren clutched at Marin. I don't want a house. I want... Go, Marin said, and her voice only broke a little. Go and be safe. That's the whole reason I'm here. Let me have that, please. She held her sister until the guards, embarrassed and gentle, drew the girl away down the corridor and out of sight. And then she stood very straight until the sound of weeping had faded, and only then did she let herself sag against the cold wall. Your name is Doran, she said, without looking up. You're his second. And an hour ago, you told me, the last one is still screaming. So before I go one step further, you're going to tell me what that means. Doran regarded her with something that might have been respect. You don't waste time. I've spent my whole life being told to wait for a better moment. It never comes. Talk. He glanced both ways, down the empty corridor, then drew her into an alcove behind a tapestry that showed some ancient vein putting some ancient enemy to the sword. What do you know about the king? That he's cruel. That he won a war. That people are terrified of him. All true, and none of it, the important part. Doran's jaw worked. There is a sickness in our alpha bloodlines. Rare. We call it the waning. A wolf and its man are meant to be one creature, Two halves of a whole in the waning, the halves come apart. The wolf turns, goes cold, goes feral, gnaws itself loose from the man's control a little more each night. It always ends the same way. The wolf devours the man from the inside, and what's left has to be put down by his own people, for the safety of the pack. He said it flatly. A man reporting weather. Emeric has been waning for 2 years. He hides it. I help him hide it. Do you understand now why every wolf in that hall was sweating? That pressure you felt, that was him holding the wolf back by his fingernails. It gets worse every day. Soon he won't be able to hold it at all. Marin's mouth had gone dry. And the last one. There is one thing that slows the waning. Doran's eyes were steady on hers. A true Luna, a mate bond. The wolf remembers itself in the presence of the one it's bound to. We've tried to arrange it 4 times. 4 highborn women. All willing, all suitable. Every time, the moment they got near him, the wolf lunged instead of quieted. 2 were hurt. The last, he paused. The last is alive. She is in a tower on the east side, and she has not stopped screaming in her sleep for 3 months because she got close enough to look into what he's carrying, and it looked back. The corridor tilted very slightly. But you, Duran said softly, you knelt 6 feet from a waning alpha at the end of his rope, and his wolf went to sleep like a child. I have never seen anything like it. He has never seen anything like it. That's why he offered you a crown, in front of the whole court, like a man losing his mind. Because you may be the only living thing that can save his life, and you walked into his hall, by accident, offering to die. Marin stared at him. Somewhere down the corridor, faint and terrible, she thought she could hear it now that she was listening for it, a thin, ragged sound, high in the walls of the palace, that she had taken for wind. It was not wind. Why me? She whispered. I'm nobody. Why would his wolf choose me? Doran's face did something complicated. That, he said, is the question that's going to get us all killed, if we don't answer it in time. They gave her rooms she was afraid to touch, and a maid she was afraid to order about, and at dawn, an old woman let herself in without knocking, and sat down on the end of Marin's enormous, terrifying bed, as though she owned it. So you're the miracle, the woman said. She was small and brown and folded like old paper, with eyes so pale they were almost silver, and a chain of little carved bones around her neck that clicked when she moved. I'm Yeva, Moon Priestess. I've buried 3 kings, and I intend to bury a 4th, but I'd rather it wasn't this one, and I'd rather it wasn't soon. Get up. We have a great deal to teach you, and almost no time. Everyone keeps saying that, no time. Marin pulled the blanket up. How much time exactly? 11 days. Yeva said it without softening it. The long moon rises in 11 days. It comes once in a generation, when the moon hangs full for 3 whole nights instead of 1. It is the only night the old rites hold enough power to seal a true bond, or to break a man who cannot form one. She spread her spotted hands. If Emeric takes a Luna under the long moon, the bond roots deep enough to hold the wolf, perhaps for good. If he does not, if the waning is still winning when that moon sets, then it wins, for the last time he turns, and we put him down. Marin's stomach dropped. 11 days to make a stranger fall in love with me. No. Yeva's pale eyes sharpened. A bond isn't love, girl. Not at the start. Love is what you build on top of it, if you're lucky and stupid and brave. A bond is recognition. 2 halves knowing each other, and his wolf already knows you. That's the miracle. None of us understand. The work isn't making it happen. The work is keeping you both alive long enough for it to. And keeping you willing. Which brings me to the part I dislike. There's always a part you dislike. You're clever. Good. Listen. Yeva leaned forward, and the little bones clicked. When the bond roots, it goes both ways. His fate becomes your fate. If it saves him, wonderful. But if it fails, if he turns under the long moon with the bond half made, it will not simply kill him. She held Marin's gaze. It will take you with him. A half bond, broken by death, tears the surviving half apart. There is no coming back from it, so understand what you agreed to. On that floor, Marin, of the West March, you did not sell 11 days. You wagered the whole rest of your life on a man you've never spoken 12 words to. The room was very quiet. Outside, the palace was waking. Somewhere, a bell rang. Then I should be glad, Marin said, and was surprised to find she half meant it, that I never had much of a life to wager. Yeva went still. Then she reached out and unexpectedly took Marin's chin in her cold fingers and turned her face toward the light, studying her the way a jeweler studies a flawed stone. There it is, the priestess murmured. That's the thing I was sent to find. She let go. You've spent your years making yourself into a thing that's useful to keep and easy to lose. The lantern keeper, the one who goes without, so the little one can eat. The one who kneels to die, so someone else can live. Her voice was not unkind, which made it worse. You've never once believed you were worth saving, for your own sake, have you? Marin's eyes stung, furious and sudden. It's not. What? Yeva said gently. True. Marin couldn't answer. I tell you this, not to wound you, the old woman said, rising with a crackle of joints, but because it may be the most dangerous thing about you. His wolf is dying, because a man cut away the part of himself he couldn't bear to keep. You've done a smaller version of the same trick your whole life. Two people missing the same piece. She moved toward the door, then stopped. It might be why he calms for you, like calls to like. Or, and here her pale eyes grew troubled in a way that frightened Marin more than anything Duran had said. It might be something a great deal older and worse. And if it's that, then 11 days will not be nearly enough, and I will have to tell you a truth about your own blood that no one has ever dared tell you. What truth? Marin was on her feet now, cold all over. What do you mean, my blood? But Yeva only opened the door. One impossible thing at a time, she said. Tonight you meet your husband properly. Try not to let him see how frightened you are. He can smell it. And so, God help us, can the other thing inside him. She met him at dusk in a study that smelled of ink and cold ash, and the first thing the Ash King said to her was, You look like you're waiting to be sentenced. Force of habit. Marin stayed by the door. It's been a busy week for it. Emeric Vane sat behind a desk buried in maps and dispatches, and in the low light he looked worse than he had on the dais. The gray at his temple more pronounced, the shadows beneath his eyes carved deep, a fine tremor in the hand that held his pen that he stilled the moment he noticed her noticing. But the terrible pressure that had filled the throne hall was gone. The room was just a room, a tired man in it. Sit, he said. Then, after a beat, awkwardly as if the word were rusty. Please, she sat. The chair was too grand. She perched on the edge of it like a bird ready to bolt. I won't insult you by pretending you don't know what this is, he said. Doran will have told you. Yeva certainly will have. You know I'm dying. You know you're the only door out of it anyone's found. You know your sister's safety hangs on your staying. His blade-colored eyes met hers. So I want to be clear about what I am, and I'm not asking. I need you near me. I need the wolf calm. In public, I need you to be my Luna, convincing enough that the court and the border lords believe this is a match, and not a drowning man grabbing a rope. That's the whole of the bargain. I will not touch you. I will not court you. I will not ask you to pretend to a feeling in private that isn't there. When the long moon has passed, and I'm either bound or dead, you're free. Either way. Rich, if I live. Widowed and richer, if I don't. He said it evenly, a man reading terms. I've had enough taken by force in this world that I won't build my survival on doing the same to you. Marin looked at this exhausted, frightening, unexpectedly careful man, and felt the whole speech she'd prepared about dignity and boundaries dissolve uselessly on her tongue. That's very decent of you, she said. For a man everyone swears eats his enemies. I do eat my enemies, he said. You're not my enemy. A pause. You're the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. But you're not my enemy. To her horror, she laughed. And to her greater horror, the corner of his hard mouth moved. Just slightly, just once before he mastered it. There's one thing you should know, that Doran won't have told you, he said, sobering. Because he thinks it will frighten you off. When my wolf is bad, when the waning is winning, I lose time. I go somewhere, inside. It's cold there. I don't remember it clearly, and I'm grateful for that. The women before you, when they came near me in that state, they said they were pulled toward it, that they could feel the edge of it. It's why they broke. His jaw tightened. If you ever feel yourself slipping toward somewhere cold when you're near me, a place with snow, with a wrong moon, you pull back, Marin. You don't follow. You wake yourself up, and you call for Doran, and you don't come near me again until dawn. Promise me that. It's the only rule I'll ever give you. A place with snow, she repeated slowly, and a wrong moon. Promise me. I promise, she lied, because she had already learned, kneeling on a black stone floor, exactly how much her promises were worth when someone she was starting to care about needed saving. That night, she lay in her enormous bed listening to the palace breathe, and just as sleep took her, she heard it again, the thin, ragged sound in the walls, the one that wasn't wind, and this time, half dreaming, she made the mistake of listening toward it. The bed was gone. She was standing in snow to her ankles, in a black forest under a moon that hung too low and too large and the wrong color entirely, a sick silver white like a blind eye. The cold was not like winter cold. It was the cold of a thing that had given up. And ahead of her, in a clearing ringed by trees, hung with frost, something enormous lay chained. It was a wolf, or it had been. It was starved down to a ruin of a thing, its coat gone to gray and its ribs like the staves of a wrecked ship, and around its throat was a collar of black iron that had grown into the flesh. It had stopped thrashing a long time ago. It only lay there in the killing snow, breathing, waiting to die. Then it lifted its great ruined head, and its eyes were the color of a blade, held to firelight, and they found her across the clearing, with an expression of such total, disbelieving, agonized hope that Marin's heart cracked straight down the middle. "You came," said the wolf, though its mouth did not move. Its voice was Emmerich's, and not Emmerich's, and older than both. "No one ever comes. You're not supposed to be able to come. What are you?" she whispered. The wolf's ravaged sides heaved. "I'm the part of him that still wants to live," it said. "And I have been screaming your name for 2 years. And he will not. He cannot. Let himself hear it." Behind her, in the frozen trees, something else moved. Something that did not want her there. And the wolf's eyes went wide with terror, not for itself, but for her. And it surged against its grown-in chains and howled a single word that was also somehow a name. Marin woke, with snow melting on her eyelashes, and her own scream still climbing her throat, in a bed in a palace where it could not have snowed. There was frost on the inside of her window. And in the doorway, drawn by her cry, stood the Ash King himself, barefoot and gray-faced and staring at her wet hair, her frost-rimed blankets, with an expression of dawning, horrified understanding. "You followed," he breathed. "God help us both, you followed and it let you in." She should have been sent away that night. Instead, an hour before dawn, she and the Ash King had a fight in a freezing bedchamber that decided the whole shape of everything after. "You will not do it again." Emmerich had lit every candle in the room as if light could undo what he'd seen, and he stood over her, wild-eyed, a king reduced to a frightened man in bare feet. "You felt the cold. I told you to pull back. You promised. I lied." Marin pushed her frost-damp hair out of her face and met his glare with one of her own. "I'm a very good liar. It's practically the family trade. Now sit down before you fall down. You look like a man who's been chewed. Do you have any idea what almost happened to you?" "Yes." She stood, and the blanket fell away, and she saw him recoil from her the way a man recoils from a fire, He's already been burned by. I saw it. I saw him. Her voice cracked. The wolf. Chained in the snow, starved down to nothing, with a collar grown into his throat. I saw his eyes, Emmerich, and they were your eyes. And he looked at me like I was the first warm thing he'd seen in 2 years. She was shaking now and not from the cold. And when I woke up, you looked at me exactly the same way. So don't tell me to stay away. Every one of your careful, high-born ladies stayed the safe distance and it broke them. I got close, and I came back with my mind intact. Doesn't that tell you something? He had gone very still. It tells me you're either the answer or the fastest way I've ever found to get someone killed. Then let's find out which, she said. Before the moon does it for us. That was how the days began. By daylight, she was Luna in waiting, and it was frankly absurd. There were dresses that cost more than her village. There were forks. She'd been right about the forks, arranged in ranks like little silver soldiers, and a mortified steward who had to teach her which fork threatened which course. She learned to curtsy without looking like she was being sick. She learned the names of border lords she'd never see again. And she learned quickly that the court had decided a lantern keeper in the Luna's seat was a personal insult, and that its opinion had a face. The face belonged to Lady Audley Wren, who was beautiful the way a knife is beautiful, and who had spent a year being everyone's assumption for the crown before a filthy nobody knelt on the floor and stole it. "They'll tire of you," Audley told her pleasantly at a dinner, under the noise, smiling for the room. "Novelty always fades. He'll keep you until he's had his use of you, and then you'll be a footnote. If you're clever, you'll take a great deal of jewelry with you when you go." Her smile didn't waver. The last one thought she was special too. By night, everything was different. By night, there were no forks. She would sit in his study while he worked, because proximity was the whole point, and at first, they said nothing. And then, because Marin could not endure a silence to save her life, she talked. She told him about the boundary lanterns, how you learned to read the West March, by which ones the wind put out. She told him about the winter she and Wren had eaten nothing but turnips and had invented 40 names for turnips to make it bearable. She did not notice, the first few nights, the exact moment his pen went still and he simply listened. But she noticed, the night, he laughed. She'd been describing turnip name number 31, the sorrowful moon root, and it came out of him rough and disused, a sound like a door opening in a house that had been shut a long time, and it startled them both. He looked almost afraid of it. Then something in his haggard face eased, just slightly, just for a moment, and he said, quietly, 31. What was 32? You were listening. I'm always listening. He set down the pen. In the candlelight, the tremor in his hand was worse than it had been the week before, and they both pretended not to see it. It's the only part of the day the cold gets quiet, he admitted, and it cost him something to say it. When you talk, I don't know why. I've stopped trying to know why. I just wait for it now. He looked away. The flush of a man, unused to confessing anything, creeping up his neck. That's a foolish thing for a king to tell a stranger. I'm your wife, Marin said. Or, I will be. That's better than a stranger. Is it? Marginally. We've established you don't want to eat me. That's a stronger foundation than most marriages start with. The next night, he did something that undid her more thoroughly than any confession could have. She arrived to find a second chair by the fire, smaller, worn, unmistakably hauled up from some servant's hall, set at the exact angle a person would choose to talk to someone at the desk, without craning their neck. Neither did she, but she sat in it, and it fit her, and she understood that he'd noticed she'd spent a week perching on the edges of grand furniture like a guest who expected to be asked to leave, and had quietly fixed it. You didn't have to, she said. I'm well aware of what I have and haven't got to do. He didn't look up from his dispatch. Tell me about the green lantern, the one on the ridge you mentioned. So she did. And somewhere in the middle of it, he set the pen down entirely and turned his chair and gave her the whole of his terrible attention, and it was the most unguarded either of them had been. "Can I ask you something?" she said, "without you having the guard remove me?" "Depends entirely on the something." "When did you last let anyone see you tired?" He was quiet. A long moment before the war. Another pause. Longer. "You're the first person in 2 years I haven't had to perform being fine for. I keep waiting to resent you for it." His mouth twitched. Not quite humor. "It isn't happening. It's very inconvenient. I have that effect. It's the lanterns. Something about me says it's safe to put the weight down for a minute." "Yes," he said simply, and it wasn't a joke anymore, and neither of them knew what to do with that, so they sat in it together while the fire burned low. 4 days slipped by like that, in their improbable rhythm. On the fourth, the corner of his mouth moved, and for one suspended breath she thought he might say something more. His gaze had dropped to her mouth, and the air between them had changed weight, when a knock came and the moment shattered like ice underfoot. It was Doran, gray-faced, with a folded paper in his hand. "Forgive me, sire." His eyes went to Marin, and there was something terrible in them. "It's the girl, your sister, the house on the coast." He held out the paper. "The guards are dead, and Dren is gone." Marin did not remember crossing the room. She only knew that one moment she was in a chair, and the next she had the paper in her fist, and the king's arm was around her shoulders holding her upright, and she was reading the same 3 lines over and over without any of them meaning anything. "Household attacked at moonset. 2 guards slain, ward, Wren taken. No demand received." "No demand," she whispered. "If someone took her for ransom, there'd be a demand. If there's no demand, then they didn't take her for money. They took her to—" Her legs gave. Emeric caught her, and she felt the jolt go through him at the contact, felt the cold that lived in him press against her skin, and she was too far gone to care. "They took her to hurt me. To hurt you." "Who would—" "Audley Wren," Emeric said, and his voice had gone to something low and flat and lethal. The voice of the man who'd salted the north, or someone using her colors. It doesn't matter which. "Doran, already moving, sire. Riders on every coast road within the hour. I want the girl found unharmed." The pressure was rising in the room again, seeping out of him, the wolf stirring toward violence, and Marin watched him fight it down by sheer will, his jaw white. "If one hair, Emeric." Marin caught his face in both her hands, the way Yeva had caught hers, because his eyes had begun to go pale at the edges, the blade color washing out toward that sick silver-white she'd seen on the moon in the frozen forest. "Look at me. You go over the edge now, and you're no use to her." He was slipping. She could feel the cold pouring off him in waves, could feel, horribly, a tug in her own chest, an invitation, come toward the cold, follow it down. And she understood in a rush of terror that his rule had not been paranoia. The place reached, "Stay with me. Breathe, I'm here." And then, without deciding to, she did the thing she'd sworn she would. She let herself feel the pull, just a little, just enough, and she followed him partway down. The study didn't vanish this time. It thinned, like a curtain gone gauzy, and behind it she could see the snow and the wrong moon and the chained ruin of the wolf, and she could feel Emeric there beside her, half in the world and half in the cold. But this time she was holding his face. This time there was contact, warm skin under her palms, and she found that the contact was a rope. She could feel where he ended and where the cold began, and she could stand in the doorway between them without falling through. "Come back," she told the wolf across the snow. "Both of you, come back to me." The starved wolf lifted its head, and the pull reversed. She felt Emeric's surface like a drowning man breaking water, felt the cold recede, felt his real breath shudder back into the real room, and when she opened her eyes, his were blade bright again, sane again, and he was staring at her with naked astonishment. "You held the door," he breathed. "You stood in it, and you held it. No one has ever. The cold takes everything that touches it, How are you not? I don't know. Her hands were still on his face. Neither of them moved to change that. Emmerich, when I was in there just now, I saw the collar on the wolf, the iron that's grown into his throat. She swallowed. It isn't a witch's curse. It isn't the enemy. There are no marks on it, no runes, nothing. It's just grief forged solid. Somebody put that collar on him, her voice dropped. He put it on himself, didn't he? He chained his own wolf. That's why nothing you've tried can cut it, because none of you were ever meant to. The only one who can take it off is the one who locked it. Emmerich had gone white. He took her wrists, gently, and drew her hands from his face, and the loss of that contact was a physical cold. How could you possibly know that? He said. And it wasn't quite a question, because I know how it's done. She held his gaze, and something in her chest, long buried, cracked open to meet him. I changed something of my own a long time ago. You learned to recognize the make of the luck. She drew a breath. What did you do, Emmerich? What's so terrible that you'd rather die than let your own wolf loose to remember it? For a long moment she thought he would tell her. His mouth opened. Something moved behind his eyes. Not the wolf, not the cold, but the man, wanting, finally, to set it down. Then, over his shoulder, in the thin place where the world had gone gauzy and had not quite finished mending, Marin saw the frozen trees behind the chained wolf, and she saw the thing that hunted there step out from between them, tall and wrong, and wearing, over its warped face, the exact features of the king in front of her. It smiled at her with Emmerich's mouth, and it lifted one finger to its lips. She said nothing that night, and it was the worst mistake she ever made. She told herself she was protecting him. He was hunting for her sister. He was hanging on to his own mind by a thread. How could she turn to him and say there is a second you inside your head, and it wears your face, and it does not want me here? She had no proof it was real. She'd been half in the cold, exhausted, frightened out of her wits. Perhaps she'd imagined it. Perhaps it was only fear wearing a familiar face, the way fear always does. So she kept the secret. And she had learned nothing, apparently, from watching a man nearly die of the exact same habit. For 3 days, the riders searched the coast and found nothing. For 3 days, Marin sat, with Emmerich by night, and held the door when the cold rose. And each time it took a little more out of her. She was pale now, her hands unsteady, a low ringing in her ears that never fully stopped. Yeva noticed. Of course Yeva noticed. You're spending yourself, the old priestess said, catching Marin's wrist and turning it over to press 2 fingers to the pulse. Her pale eyes narrowed. Every time you hold that door, you are paying for it. The bond's forming. I can feel it rooting in you both, but it's forming, sideways. Too fast. Wrong. Something's forcing it. She looked up sharply. There's something in there with him, isn't there? Something you haven't told me. And Marin, God help her, lied again. No, only the cold. That night, the cold came harder than it ever had. She was in his chamber when it hit. A fitting had run long, and it was near midnight before she reached him, and she knew the moment she opened the door that it was bad. The room was rimed white, frost climbed the walls. And Emmerich stood at the center of it, with his back to her, utterly still, and when he turned, his eyes were the blind silver of the wrong moon, and the thing looking out of them was not the man, and was not the starved chained wolf. It was the third thing, the hunter, wearing him like a coat. There you are, it said, in Emmerich's voice, and smiled. Emmerich's smile. You've been holding my door shut. Little lantern keeper, I've come to blow you out. Emmerich, Marin said, backing toward the door. Emmerich, fight it. It crossed the room faster than a man could move. Its hand closed hard around her wrist, and the cold went into her like drowning. Like the pull she'd resisted for a week, finally taking her all at once, and she felt herself being dragged down toward the snow and the frozen trees. With no rope, no contact, no door, because the grip on her wrist was the door, and it had swung shut behind her. She did the only thing left. She twisted her free hand up and laid her palm flat against his cheek, against the man underneath, and she said with the last of her breath, "Emeric, come back to the sound of my voice." For one heartbeat, nothing. Then his real eyes surfaced through the silver. Horror struck Holy himself, and he tore his own hand off her wrist and threw himself backward across the room as though her skin had burned him, crashing into the wall, sliding down it, shaking. "Get out," he rasped. "Emeric, get out." He would not look at her. His voice was wreckage. "I felt it choose. I felt it decide to be rid of you, and I felt how close it came to doing it with my own hands. It doesn't want to break you like the others. It wants to use me against you, because you're the only thing that can free the wolf, and it will burn this whole kingdom before it lets that happen." He dragged a breath. "Doran will keep looking for your sister. You'll have every guard I can spare, but you don't come near me again. Not by day, not by night, not in the cold, not ever. I will not be the thing that murders the one person who ever walked toward me. If I stop coming near you, you turn under the long moon," Marin said, tears standing in her eyes. Yeva said, "You turn, and they put you down. And the bond's already rooting. If you die with it half made, it takes me with you. Sending me away doesn't save me. You stubborn, self-sacrificing." Her voice broke on the accusation because she had made it word for word to herself. "On a black stone floor a lifetime ago. It just means we die apart instead of together." Emeric closed his eyes. When he opened them, the king was back in place. Cold and final, the drawbridge up. "Then we die apart," he said. "Go." And because a guard had already stepped in and taken her arm, and because her legs would not hold her, and because the man on the floor had turned his face to the wall and would not look, she went. The corridor outside was dark and endless. She got perhaps 20 steps before her knees buckled, and she slid down the cold stone and let herself finally shake. That was where Doran found her, minutes later, running, out of breath, with a torn scrap of gray and silver cloth in his fist and a look on his face she had never seen there before. "Marin," he crouched, gripped her shoulder. "The coast trail was a plant. A false lead laid to keep us searching the wrong direction. We found where they really took her." He held up the cloth. "Oddly wrens, colors. Your sister's not being held for you. She's being held for the long moon. They mean to use her." His voice dropped. "There's an old right girl, a darker cousin of the one that seals a bond. You can force the waning to finish early, tip the king fully feral before the moon. If you take the life the thing his wolf loves best." He looked at the torn colors in his hand, then back at her white face. "And it isn't you they've worked out. He loves. Not yet. It's the 16-year-old girl he pardoned to get you. They mean to end her under the long moon and make the wolf watch." Marin stopped shaking somewhere around the word watch. It was a strange thing, terror turning to iron. She'd felt it once before, kneeling on black stone, when begging had failed, and only offering herself had been left. It came again, now cold and clarifying, and she got to her feet in the dark corridor while Doran was still crouched over her. "How long until the long moon?" "4 nights." He rose with her. "Marin, listen to me. The king has forbidden—" "The king," Marin said, "is currently deciding it's more noble to die alone in a frost-covered room than to let anyone help him. And I've had just about enough of noble men and their beautiful reasons for giving up." Her voice didn't shake at all now, which frightened her more than the shaking had. "Where is my sister?" "The Wren hold fast north, hard against the old rebellion border." Doran hesitated. "It's a fortress. They'll be expecting a rescue. And even if we take it, even if we get the girl out, it changes nothing about him. You can save Wren or you can save Emeric. I don't see how you do both by the same moon." "Then you're not looking hard enough." She started walking. "Find Yeva. Now." She found the priestess already awake, already dressed, sitting in Marin's own rooms, as though she'd known she'd be needed, the little carved bones clicking as she turned them over in her lap. "You've decided something?" Yeva said, reading her face. Good. It's about time you decided something for yourself, instead of just surviving what other people decide at you. She patted the bench beside her. Sit. Before you go and be brave, there's the truth. I promised, about your blood. You'll want to be sitting. Marin sat. When I first put my hands on you, I felt something I hadn't felt in 40 years, and I prayed I was wrong. Yeva's pale eyes were steady. You are not a nobody child. Whatever you've spent your life believing, your mother's people were the Vessen. There are almost none left. We hunted them nearly to nothing in the old superstitious days, because we feared what they could do, and what they could do was this. She tapped Marin's breastbone. A wolf and its man are joined by a door. In sickness the door jams, open, shut, wrongly hinged. The Vessen were the door wardens. They could walk the threshold between the two halves of a soul and set the hinge right. Your ancestors did for kings exactly what you have been doing for Emmerich by instinct and stubbornness. You were born to stand in that doorway and hold it. It's not a miracle that his wolf calmed for you. It's a homecoming. His wolf has been screaming for a door warden for 2 years. And the universe, in its terrible humor, dropped one on his throne room floor begging to die. Marin's ears were ringing. My mother was a lantern keeper. She kept boundary lights. She died when I was 6. Where do you think the job came from? Yeva said gently. What is a lantern keeper but a warden of the boundary, the one who tends the line between the safe dark and the dangerous one? Your people took the humblest possible shape of what they were and hid inside it. Your mother put you on that western march to keep you small and safe and forgotten, and she did such a good job of it that you forgot yourself. The old woman's voice softened. You've spent your whole life certain you were worth nothing but what you could give away. You are the last of a bloodline the crown itself once feared. Sit with that. Marin could not speak. There's more, and it's the hard part. Yeva took her hand. A door warden can hold a door. But to unlock one that's been sealed from the inside, to reach into a man and take off a collar he forged himself, the warden has to open her own door first, all the way. You cannot free his wolf while your own is still chained. By a lie you've told yourself since you were a child. Her grip tightened. The lie that you exist to be spent. If you walk in there to sacrifice yourself for him, the way you sacrificed yourself for Ren, the way you were about to on that floor, the door will not open. Sacrifice is just another cage, girl. He built his out of guilt. You built yours out of worthlessness. They lock the same way. She sat back. You cannot save him by dying for him. You can only save him by deciding, first, that you deserve to live with him. Do you see how narrow the road is? I see it, Marin whispered. And then, because she had to know, the thing that hunts inside him, wearing his face. What is it? Yeva went very still. You've seen it 3 nights ago. And tonight, it used his hands. It tried to kill me. Her voice cracked. I didn't tell anyone. I thought I was protecting him. Foolish child. But there was no heat in it, only grief. That is the cruelest part of the waning, and I hoped you'd be spared knowing. When a man chains his own wolf, the wolf is only half of what he buried. The wolf is his grief, his conscience, the part that can still feel. But something has to carry the sentence he passed on himself. Something has to be the judge. That's the hunter. It is the part of Emmerich that agrees he is a monster and wants the execution carried out. It wears his face because it is his face. It is his self-hatred. Given teeth. Yeva's hand trembled, and now it knows you can free the wolf. So it will do anything. Use his hands. Use the moon. Use your sister's blood to make sure the sentence lands before you can lift it. You are not fighting a curse, Marin. You are fighting a man who has already decided he should die, and has grown a second self to make certain he does. Somewhere far off in the sleeping palace, a clock struck the hour, and each stroke sounded to Marin like a footstep in the snow. 4 nights. she said. 4 nights, Yeva agreed. To break into a fortress, save one sister, unlock 2 doors, and convince the deadliest man alive that he's allowed to survive what he's done. Her pale eyes glinted, and something almost like a smile touched her ancient mouth. You're the last Vesson door warden in the world, and you were about to throw yourself away on a stone floor. Go prove. Your mother wasted her time hiding you. She went to him at once, of course. She had never been any good at doing the sensible thing when someone she loved was behind a locked door. The guards outside his chamber crossed their spears. His Majesty's orders. No one enters. His Majesty, Marin said, is going to have to invent a new punishment for me, because I've run out of fear of the old ones. She looked at the nearer guard. A boy, really, and something in her face made him swallow. You can hold that spear there all night, or you can decide, just this once, that the last Vesson door warden knows better than a dying man about how not to die. Your choice. But if he turns feral in 4 nights, because you kept out the one person who could stop it, you'll carry that a lot longer than I'll carry your disobedience. The spears wavered, then lifted. Emmerich was where she'd left him, on the floor, with his back to the wall, and the frost had spread so far the whole room glittered like the inside of a geode. He didn't look up. I gave an order, you give a great many. I've noticed I only obey the ones I agree with. She crossed the icy floor and sat down beside him, close her shoulder against his, and felt him flinch, and then, helplessly lean. I know what you did, Emmerich, in the war. I know why you chained your wolf. She felt him go rigid. I don't know the details. Yeva only knows the shape of it, but I know the shapes enough. Tell me, say it out loud to someone who isn't going to leave. For a long time she thought he wouldn't. The frost ticked and spread, and then, in a voice scraped down to nothing, the Ash King told her. The rebellion in the north, Ulrich Thorn. He wouldn't treat, wouldn't yield, kept bleeding my border villages for 2 years. In the last winter, I ran him and his people to ground in the Vale of Kor, a box canyon, 1 pass in. I had them. I could have laid siege. Weeks maybe, but I had them. He stared at nothing. It was killing my soldiers by inches. The siege, cold, sickness. And I was so tired of the whole rotten war, so I gave the order to seal the pass and burn the Vale. End it in a night, instead of a month. Save my people weeks of dying. His jaw worked. My wolf knew. Wolves scent what men let themselves ignore. He knew there were others in that Vale, the ones who couldn't fight. The old, the young. Thorn's people had brought their families to the only ground they thought was safe. His voice dropped to almost nothing. My wolf threw himself against the inside of me and begged me not to. Howled it. And I couldn't do the thing and hear that at the same time, so I shut him out. I silenced the only part of me that still knew it was wrong. And I gave the order and I sealed the pass, and I burned the Vale of Kor with everyone in it. And it worked. The rebellion ended in a night. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were wells. And when it was over and I could bear to let my wolf back in, he wouldn't stop grieving. He grieved so loud I couldn't rule, couldn't eat, couldn't think. So I did the last unforgivable thing. I chained him. I put a collar on my own grief and my own conscience, and I dragged them down into the cold so I'd never have to hear them again. A terrible broken laugh. And you wonder why something in me wants me dead. The wonder is that it took 2 years to grow a mouth. Marin was crying, silently, but she did not look away, and she did not tell him it was all right, because it wasn't, and he would have known she was lying. That was a monstrous thing to do, she said instead quietly. The Vale it was. He shuddered, like she'd struck him, and then, strangely, like something in him had eased, at finally being told the truth to his face. But you were 26 years old and drowning in a war you didn't start, she went on. And you made a monstrous choice to end it, and you have spent every night since being devoured by the fact that it was monstrous. That's not a monster, Emmerich. A monster feels nothing. You built an entire second self out of how much you feel. She took his cold face in her warm hands and turned it to her. Your wolf isn't your enemy. Your wolf is the part of you that's still good. That's why you locked him away, because his goodness was unbearable to live beside after what you'd done. You didn't chain a beast. You chained your own broken heart. I don't deserve to have it back, he whispered. No, Marin agreed, and felt him brace against it. Probably you don't. Neither do I deserve half of what I want. That's not how deserving works. I'm learning that this week from a very rude old woman. You don't get your heart back because you've earned it. You get it back because the alternative is dying with your throat in your own iron, and because there is a 16-year-old girl 4 nights north who is going to die under the moon if the wolf you buried isn't there to help me save her. She pressed her forehead to his. So you don't have to forgive yourself, Emmerich. Not tonight, not for years. You just have to let me open the door. Let me be your door warden. Let me in. And the Ash King, who had not let anyone in for 2 years, who had walled off the last soft thing in himself, behind grief and iron and a hunter with his own face, turned his head that last half-inch and kissed her. It was not gentle, and it was not the kiss of a man being saved. It was the kiss of a man who had decided, all at once, and against every rule he'd made, to want something for himself, and Marin met it, exactly because she had spent this whole terrible week deciding the same impossible thing. The frost on the walls began, very quietly, to melt. When they broke apart, they were both shaking, and his eyes had gone bright and blade clear. No silver at the edges, at all warmer than she'd ever seen them. That was a mistake, he said, against her mouth, with no conviction whatsoever. You've made worse ones. You told me about them 10 minutes ago. She was breathless and half laughing and crying at once. Do it again. He did. And this time when the pull came, the tug toward the cold, the invitation to slip down toward the snow, it did not frighten her, because she went toward it holding his hand in the real world, and his mouth on hers. And she understood at last what a bond truly was. Not the cold reaching for her reaching through the cold and finding him on the other side, and neither of them alone in it anymore. Something rooted deep in her chest, warm, gold, right. She gasped with it, and felt him gasp too, felt the exact instant he felt her back, felt his shock and his grief and his terrified, disbelieving joy pour through the new-made channel between them as if they'd always shared one heart and only just been told. There you are, he breathed, wondering, one hand splayed over her breastbone as though he could feel the bond taking root beneath it. I've been so cold for so long. I thought that was just what I was now, cold, all the way down. His voice broke. You're warm, so are you. She caught his hand and held it there, under all of it. You always were. They didn't sleep. There wasn't time. And neither of them wanted to waste an hour of the 4 they had. But he pulled her into the great cold bed and wrapped himself around her, and for the first time the frost did not come, and for a little while, an hour less, the deadliest man in the kingdom slept without nightmares against the shoulder of a lantern-keeper. And she lay awake feeling the new bond hum between them, and thought her heart might crack from the sheer unfamiliar weight of being chosen. Toward dawn, he woke, and found her watching him and did not look away. The bond's rooted, he said quietly. I can feel you, which means Yeva's right. If I turn under the long moon now, it won't just kill me. His jaw tightened. It takes you. I've tied my death to the only person I've ever. He stopped, and she felt the word he wouldn't say come through the bond anyway, warm and terrified. I've made it worse. You've made it even, Marin corrected. Now you can't nobly die to protect me, because dying kills me too. So you're going to have to do the much harder thing. She sat up. You're going to have to fight, to live all the way. Not just fight the wolf, fight for him. Fight for the right to have your own heart back. She met his eyes. And you're going to do it 3 nights from now in the Renhold fast under a moon that hangs full for 3 whole nights, because that's where my sister is, And I am not choosing between the two of you. I refuse. I've spent my whole life letting other people set the terms of what I'm allowed to save. Not this time. We get her, and we free your wolf, and we do it on the same night, or I'll have died for nothing, on a floor a week ago, and I did not come this far to have wasted a perfectly good, grand gesture. Emmerich stared at her. Then he laughed, that rough, disused, door-opening laugh, fuller now than the first time, and pulled her down and kissed her hair. "You're going to be a catastrophe of a Luna," he said. "The worst one Duskmere's ever had. People will write songs. They'll be unflattering." She pressed her palm to his heart, felt it beating strong and warm. "Emmerich, when we go north, the hunter will come. It knows what we've done. It knows the bond's rooted, and it knows I'm the door. It will use everything it has to make sure you turn, before I can unlock the wolf. It will use Ren, it will use your own hands. It will wear your face, and it will sound exactly like you, and it will tell me the truest, cruelest things it can find. Then how will you know which of us is real?" She looked up at him. "Because the real you spent an hour tonight telling a stranger the worst thing he's ever done because she asked him not to be alone with it. The thing that hunts you would never do that. It doesn't want to be less alone. It wants you dead." She kissed him once, softly. "I'll know you, Emmerich Vane. I'm your door warden. Knowing which of you is which is the whole entire job." On the fourth night, the long moon rose over the north, and they rode to meet it. The moon hung swollen and low, and silver-white, and Marin thought, "That's the moon from the frozen forest. It's not in his head at all. It's here. It's coming." And as the black towers of the Wren Holdfast rose against it, the bond in her chest went suddenly, sickeningly cold, and she heard, thin and far and unmistakable, carried on no wind at all, the sound of her sister screaming. Everything after happened very fast, and also outside of time, the way the worst nights do. The Wren Holdfast sat on a spur of black rock, with a single road up, and they took it at a gallop under a moon so full it threw shadows sharp as noon. Doran hit the gate with 40 of the king's own, and it was loud and terrible, and Marin caught only pieces of it, a portcullis chain shrieking, a torch drowning in a puddle, a Wren man-at-arms going down under Doran's blade with a look of almost comic surprise. She kept close to Emmerich. Emmerich kept close to the killing. That was the problem, because the long moon was hauling at him with every stride. She could feel it through the bond, a tide dragging out, the wolf's chains creaking, the hunter stirring gleefully awake in the dark behind his eyes, the cold climbing his spine, like water filling the hold of a sinking ship. Halfway across the outer bailey, he stumbled. His eyes washed silver, and for one heart-stopping second, the man beside her was not the man at all. She caught his wrist. She didn't stop moving. There was no time to stop moving. She simply held the door open at a dead run, a thing she had not known she could do, and poured warmth down the bond into him. "Not yet. Stay. We're almost there. Stay with me, Emmerich." He shuddered, gasped, and surfaced blade bright, and crushed her hand once, in wordless terror and gratitude, and they ran on. Doran cut them a path to the inner stair, and took a blade across the ribs to do it. "Go!" he snarled, one hand clamped to the wound, already turning to hold the doorway behind them. "Up, all the way up. She'll want the moon on the roof, she'll have taken the girl to the roof. Go!" They went up. The stair was narrow and black and endless, and with every turn, the cold in Emmerich deepened, and the wolf's chains strained nearer to snapping, and twice more Marin had to catch him, and hold the door and drag him back from the silver edge. By the final turn her ears were ringing, and there was blood in her mouth from her own bitten cheek, and she was holding two doors at once, his and the one in her own chest she had kept shut her entire life. Then the stair ended, and the night opened, and they came out onto the high roof, open to the swollen moon, and there it all was. Wren, bound and gagged, and white-faced but alive, at the roof's center. Lady Audalie Wren, beside her, with a curved ritual knife, and an expression of perfect, righteous calm. 3 of her people ranged behind, and the moon overhead, so vast and close, it seemed to fill the whole sky. "You brought him," Audley said, pleased, as though Marin had done her a favor. "I wasn't certain you would. It makes this cleaner." She raised the knife where Wren could see it, and Wren made a muffled sound, and Marin's whole world narrowed to that curve of bright metal catching the moon. The right's simple, really. I take the life the wolf lives. The grief finishes him. The kingdom gets a dead mad king, and a grieving loyal regent, ready to steady the throne in the name of a more suitable vein. She smiled. I did try to marry him, the ordinary way. He chose a lantern keeper off the floor. So, Audley, Marin said, very calm, because she'd learned that calm from a black stone floor. You've made one mistake, have I? You think it's Wren's blood that finishes him? Marin stepped forward, and beside her she felt Emmerich buckle, felt the silver flood his eyes, felt the hunter surge up wearing his face, but she did not look at him yet. It was never going to be Wren. His wolf doesn't love my sister. His wolf loves me, and I'm not tied to a post. I'm standing right here, walking toward you, offering my throat exactly like I offered it a week ago. Because that's the only trick I've ever known. She heard Yeva's voice in her memory. Sacrifice is just another cage. And she smiled at Audley with tears running down her face. And it almost worked on me again. I almost saved everyone by dying one more time. Because that's the only way I've ever believed I'm worth anything. She stopped. She turned her back on the knife, on Audley, on Wren, the hardest thing she had ever done, and she faced the thing that was no longer Emmerich. It had fully surfaced now. The hunter stood in the king's body under the long moon, silver-eyed, smiling his stolen smile, and the real Emmerich was somewhere far down in the cold, behind it, chained beside his wolf. There's my door warden, the hunter said fondly, in Emmerich's warm voice, and it was so nearly right that it cut her to the bone. Come to open the last door. You know I'll only kill you the moment you do. You know the wolf's grief will finish him and the bond will take you with him. You'll die, your sister will die, everyone dies. But you'll have tried. That's what matters to a girl like you, isn't it? Not winning. Just being spent for someone. Come here and be spent. It's all you're for. And it was true. Every word was true. That was how she knew it wasn't him. No, Marin said. That's the lie, she said, stepping toward it, opening the door in her own chest. All the way Yeva said, the way she'd never once done in her whole small, careful life. That being spent is all I'm for. My mother hid me under it. I've worn it so long, I thought it was my skin. But I'm the last Vesson door warden in the world, and my mother didn't hide me because I was worthless. She hid me because I was precious. The door in her swung wide, and light poured out of it, gold and warm and furious, and she felt her own chained wolf, the small starved thing she'd collared as a child the day she decided she deserved nothing, stand up inside her for the first time in 20 years. I am not here to die for him. I am here to live with him. And you can't stand in a doorway held open by someone who's finally decided she's worth the room she takes up. She closed the last of the distance and laid both hands flat on the hunter's chest, and she walked through the door. The roof vanished. She was in the frozen forest, under the wrong moon, except the moon was the right moon now, the long moon, the real one, pouring silver into the clearing. The chained wolf lay in the snow, ruined and vast and dying. The hunter stood over it with Emmerich's face, and somewhere behind them both, chained beside his own grief, the man himself watched with emptied eyes, waiting to be executed as he had waited for 2 years. Emmerich. Marin went to the man, not the wolf, not the hunter. She knelt in the snow and took his frozen face in her hands. Look at me. You told me the truth 3 nights ago, and the world didn't end. I didn't leave. Look at the wolf. Don't look away this time. Let yourself hear him. He'll grieve forever, Emmerich whispered. If I let him up, He'll grieve every soul in the Vale of Kor. Every night. For the rest of my life I can't carry it. That's why I chained him. I can't. You don't carry it alone anymore. She pressed his palm to her chest, to the open door, to the gold pouring out of it. That's what a bond is. That's what I'm for. Not to be spent to share the weight. Let him grieve, and I'll hold the door while he does. Every night, if I have to. You are allowed to mourn what you did, Emmerich. You are even allowed to have done it. And to still get to live. Both. At once. That's the thing the hunter will never let you believe, and it's the only thing that's true. Her voice broke. Take the collar off. I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere. I chose this. I chose you. For a long, suspended moment, nothing. Then the Ash King crawled through the snow to his own chained wolf and put his arms around its ruined neck and pressed his face into its gray and starving fur and wept. 2 years of grief breaking open all at once, for Alric Thorn, for the old and the young in the Vale of Kor, for the peace he'd murdered to end a war. For the boy of 26, who hadn't known how else to make the dying stop, and with his own 2 hands sobbing, he took hold of the black iron collar that had grown into the flesh, and he pulled. It came away like a scab from a healing wound. The wolf shuddered, its ribs filled, its coat ran silver. It opened eyes the color of a blade held to firelight, and looked at the man it had been begging to reach for 2 years, and it did not accuse him. It only pressed its great head into his chest, grief and man and wolf, finally, one grieving whole, and behind them, with a sound like ice giving way in spring, the hunter came apart into nothing at all, because self-hatred cannot survive being held. The frozen forest filled with warmth. The wrong moon turned right, and the snow began at last to melt. Maren opened her eyes on the roof of the Wren Holdfast, under the long moon. Emmerich stood beside her, whole, warm, weeping and laughing at once, his eyes clear, silver-bright, and wholly his own. And at his shoulder, half shadow and half real in the moonlight, stood an enormous silver wolf with a healed throat, leaning against him. Audley Wren had dropped the knife and was staring at the king's true wolf with the dawning horror of a woman who has badly misjudged which stories were exaggerated. Doran's people were already on the roof. It was already over. Maren ran to her sister and tore the gag away, and Wren sobbed her name, and Maren held her and looked over her shoulder at the man and the wolf she had chosen. At the door, in her own chest, still standing warm and open, and she thought, I did not come here to die. I came here to live, and I brought everyone I love through the door with me. The bond didn't finish healing him all at once. That isn't how grief works, or healing, or love. Emmerich still woke some nights cold, reaching for a collar that was no longer there. The wolf still grieved the Vale of Kor. Some things should be grieved, and the trick was never to bury them again. But now, every time the cold came, Maren was in the doorway. She would take his face in her hands and hold the door, and let him mourn. And in the morning the frost never came, and slowly, a season, then 2, the nights he woke cold grew rare. The woman in the east tower stopped screaming. The night the collar came off. Maren had not expected that, had not, in the whirl of everything, even remembered her until Yeva mentioned, weeks later, that the last failed candidate had woken calm for the first time in 3 months, and asked, quite reasonably, for breakfast. Whatever the hunter had shown her, whatever edge of the cold she'd caught herself on, it had let go, when the thing itself came apart. Maren went to see her once. They did not speak of what they had, each glimpsed in that place. They didn't need to. The woman took her hand and held it a moment. And that was the whole of the conversation, and it was enough. They hanged Audley Wren's ambitions, if not the woman herself, Emmerich, who had burned a valley, and would never again spend a life he didn't have to, exiled her instead. Wren came to live at court, and terrorized the fork stewards, and grew tall and unafraid, and declared the entire affair obvious from the start, which was a lie, and was allowed to keep it. And the court, which had been so certain a lantern keeper, could never be Luna, discovered slowly that the last Vesson door warden in the world outranked every jeweled lady in the hall by about 1,000 years of blood, would let his great silver wolf pad into the room and simply look at them until they remembered urgent business elsewhere. The border lords came around the way people always do, slowly and then all at once. It happened for good, the day a delegation from the far west rode in with a grievance about march tolls and rode out again, baffled and satisfied, having been quietly out-argued by a Luna who knew to the copper what it cost to keep a boundary lit through a bad winter. She had, it turned out, spent her whole life in unwitting training for a job no one had thought to give a name. On their wedding night, under an ordinary moon, Marin stood before the whole court in a dress with no holes in it, and did not feel small. "They still think I bewitched you," she murmured later, in the warm dark of their chambers, her head on his chest, the bond humming gold between them. "Some of them will always think that." Americ's voice rumbled under her ear, "Easy now, unhaunted. Let them. I know exactly what you did to me." He tipped her chin up. "You walked toward me. Everyone else in my whole life walked away, or walked carefully, or walked toward the crown. You're the only one who ever walked toward the wolf." He kissed her. "Thank you for not dying on my floor. Thank you for offering me a crown instead of the wall," she said. "Worst decision you ever made." "Best," he said, and pulled her closer. And months later, when Marin woke slowly to pale, morning light, with the King of Duskmere asleep beside her, warm, unhaunted, one arm around her waist, and a silver wolf curled at the foot of the bed like an enormous dog, she lay still a moment and felt the door in her own chest standing open and unafraid, taking up exactly as much room as it pleased. Then she closed her eyes and leaned back into the arms of the man who had chosen her, and let herself at last be someone worth choosing. If this one found you at the right moment, I'm glad. Take that feeling with you, and when you're ready for another, I'll be here.